The stage lights of Jimmy Kimmel Live blazed with unnatural intensity that night, as if the studio itself sensed the coming storm. What started as a typical celebrity interview segment would soon erupt into the most dramatic confrontation in late-night television history, a clash that would shatter ratings records and reset the boundaries between entertainment and political accountability forever. From the moment White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The audience, already divided along political lines, created a chaotic symphony of cheers and jeers, their partisan allegiances as clear as battle lines. One corner of the studio chanted supportive slogans for the administration, while the other side roared with laughter, loyal soldiers in Kimmel's nightly comedy war against his political opponents. Watching this right now? Take a second to subscribe. You won't want to miss our upcoming breakdown of how this single interview reshaped political media relations across America. Karoline Leavitt commanded attention without saying a word. As the youngest White House press secretary in American history, she had already built a reputation for razor-sharp responses and unshakable composure under pressure. Tonight, her blonde hair and steel-bright eyes were complemented by a striking red suit that seemed to telegraph her message before she spoke. She hadn't come to surrender to Kimmel's satirical assault. Across from her stood the king of late night himself, Jimmy Kimmel. His signature smile couldn't quite mask the predatory gleam in his eyes, the look of a comedian who had skewered countless political figures and expected tonight to be no different. His black suit was sleek and professional, but his posture betrayed his intent to cast his net of ridicule and watch his guests struggle within it. As the opening music faded, the stage lights zeroed in on center stage. Kimmel stood behind his desk, radiating confidence sharpened by years of dominating this space. "Welcome to an evening full of surprises," he began, his tone smooth but laced with unmistakable sarcasm. The audience roared with anticipatory laughter. "Tonight we have a guest from the White House. Hope she brought a map to navigate my questions." The crowd erupted again, but at the edge of the stage, Karoline Leavitt remained motionless, her lips curling into a confident smile, the kind that suggested she'd heard these lines 1,000 times before and found them utterly predictable. Leavitt stood and strode to the guest chair with measured poise, her red suit blazing under the studio lights like a declaration of war. She shook Kimmel's hand, a brief but firm grip, then sat with legs crossed neatly, her gaze never leaving her opponent. The audience fell silent, sensing that this wouldn't be the usual political punching bag segment they'd come to expect. "Karoline, welcome to the show." Kimmel leaned in, hands resting on his desk, his tone still light but loaded with intent. "What's it like being the face of the White House? Or should I say the cleanup crew for the president's tweet storms?" Laughter erupted from the audience, but Leavitt didn't flinch. She smiled, her voice clear and sharp as a blade when she responded. "What's it like? I'm proud, Jimmy. Proud to represent millions of Americans, not the people sitting here twisting the truth for laughs." The studio fell quiet, with only scattered applause from her supporters in the crowd. Kimmel raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering for a second before he regained his composure. "Oh, coming in strong. I like that. But honestly, don't you ever feel like your job is a bit like doing comedy?" Leavitt tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with intelligence and determination. "Comedy? No, Jimmy, I leave that to you. I'm here to say what needs to be said, not to perform tricks for the audience." Another wave of applause broke out, louder this time, forcing Kimmel to raise a hand to calm the crowd. The camera zoomed in on his face, still smiling, but a flicker of tension crossed his eyes as he realized this interview might not follow his usual script. Leavitt sat upright, her gaze locked on Kimmel like a gladiator who'd drawn her sword, ready for the next strike. The battle had only just begun. If you're watching this and think the mainstream media needs more accountability, hit that subscribe button now. We're just getting started with tonight's dissection of this historic confrontation. The stage lights seemed to burn even brighter as Kimmel leaned forward, his smile still in place but his eyes sharpening like a card player about to play his ace. "Karoline, you say you represent Americans," he began, his tone light but loaded with subtext. "But when the president's policies drive up prices, how do you explain that to the people struggling out there?" The audience waited in silence, some whispering to each other, sensing the shift from jest to genuine challenge. Karoline Leavitt sat upright, hands resting lightly on her lap, her eyes locked on Kimmel, as if he were the only target in her sights. "Jimmy, rising prices are a global issue, not just in America. she replied, her voice calm but cutting like a polished blade. We're protecting jobs, shielding our economy from foreign dependence. Have you ever talked about the millions who kept their jobs because of our policies? Or do you just pick numbers that make your audience laugh? A section of the audience erupted in applause, cheers rising from her supporters. Kimmel shifted in his seat, trying to interject with a quip. Oh, I love numbers, especially when they crash like the stock market. Laughter rang out. But it was weaker than expected, and Leavitt didn't let him stretch the moment. Market fluctuations are normal, Jimmy, she continued, her voice resonant, drowning out the scattered chuckles. But you know what's not normal? People like you spending entire shows twisting the truth instead of asking real questions. The audience split again. Some stood to clap, others booed, creating a chaotic wave of sound. Kimmel raised a hand to calm them, but his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. Real questions, huh? He shot back, his tone sharper. Fine. How do you explain the president constantly making claims that are, let's say, hard to verify, to be polite? Leavitt smiled, a cold but confident grin. Polite? That's a new word for you, isn't it? She said, drawing laughs from a few audience members, this time at her wit. I'm not here to play word games, Jimmy. The president says what he believes, and I clarify what needs clarifying. But if you want to talk about hard to verify, why not address how your show edits words to turn everything into a punchline? The stage shook with applause, louder than ever, forcing Kimmel to pause to regain his rhythm. The camera caught his face, still smiling, but his lips tightened noticeably. Not giving Kimmel a chance to respond, Leavitt turned to the audience, her voice like a sword slicing through the air. Folks, I know you came here for fun, but you deserve more than cheap jokes. You deserve to hear the truth about our country, about what we're doing, about what really matters. The crowd erupted, many standing, chanting, Karoline! Kimmel tried to cut in. Hey, this is a comedy show, not a political forum. But his voice was drowned out by the crowd's roar. Leavitt looked straight at him, her gaze piercing. If this is just comedy, why are you scared when I speak the truth? Do you believe entertainment media has an obligation to represent political issues fairly? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The debate over media bias needs your voice. Kimmel regained his composure, leaning closer, his tone now tinged with bitterness. The truth? You talk about truth when the whole country sees you standing behind someone who's made everything a mess. Don't you get tired of covering for him every day? The question landed like a bomb, and the audience held its breath, awaiting Leavitt's response. She didn't blink, didn't waver, only smiled faintly before replying. Covering? I'm not covering anything, Jimmy. I'm standing up for the people you and your kind ignore. The workers, the families, the people who believe in this country. What about you? What do you stand for besides laughs and ratings? The stage felt like it was on fire. The audience clapped fiercely, some shouting in support, shaking the studio. Kimmel tried to keep his smile, but his eyes showed clear discomfort. You're good, Karoline, he said, his tone reluctant. But if you're so confident, why not answer straight? Do you really believe the president is doing a good job? Or is that just your job talking? Leavitt tilted her head, her eyes never leaving Kimmel, and answered instantly. I believe in what we're doing, building a stronger America. She paused for effect. What about you, Jimmy? Do you believe in what you say every night? Or are you just reading a script for a paycheck? The applause roared again like thunder, drowning out Kimmel as he tried to interject. The camera zoomed in on Leavitt's face. No trace of fear, only absolute confidence. Kimmel's eyes began to waver. All right, he said, his voice straining to stay cheerful. You want to play? Let's see how you handle this. He signaled his team, and a large screen behind lit up, ready to play a clip from one of Leavitt's White House press briefings. Leavitt didn't flinch. She sat there, her gaze icy like a warrior poised for the next strike. If you're feeling the tension rise just watching this, imagine what it was like in that studio. Hit that like button if you appreciate seeing someone stand their ground under pressure. Now, let's watch Kimmel's next move, one that would backfire spectacularly. The large screen behind the stage lit up, playing a clip from one of Karoline Leavitt's White House press briefings. The footage showed her at the podium, seemingly hesitant while addressing the impact of tariffs. Cleverly edited to highlight her moment of unease, the clip froze just as Leavitt appeared to be at a loss for words after a reporter's smirking question. The audience erupted in laughter, spurred on by Jimmy Kimmel, who raised his hand like a gladiator, landing a critical blow. "Karoline, is this the truth you're talking about?" he asked, his tone triumphant. "Looks like you were scrambling when a reporter asked about prices spiking 15% because of the president's tariffs." Karoline Leavitt sat upright, her eyes sharp as a blade, locking onto Kimmel as if he'd just walked into her trap. "That's disappointing, Jimmy," she replied, her voice slow but cutting, resonating through the studio. "You had to dig for hours to find 5 seconds of me pausing, but you didn't dare show the other 10 minutes of that briefing where I gave the numbers. Tariffs created 2.3 million manufacturing jobs last year, per the Department of Labor's report. Want me to repeat that figure?" A section of the audience exploded in applause, cheers drowning out the scattered laughter. Kimmel raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering, but he pressed on. "Jobs? You know Americans are paying 20% more for imported goods because of that policy. Is that your truth too?" Leavitt smiled, a cold but confident grin. "You love numbers, don't you?" she said, her voice slicing like a knife. "So let's talk about this one. Before tariffs, we imported 60% of our steel from China, costing 500,000 American steel jobs from 2000 to 2015, according to the International Economic Institute. Now, thanks to our policies, domestic steel production is up 25%. That's why I'm here, Jimmy, to defend the workers you never mention in your jokes." The studio shook with applause so strong that Kimmel had to raise a hand to quiet the crowd. The camera panned to his face, his smile held but his grip on his pen tightened, his eyes betraying a hint of panic. Kimmel tried to regain control, his tone now laced with bitterness. "You're good with numbers, Karoline, but you can't deny your administration is making a mess of things. Do you ever wonder which side you're on when the world laughs at what the president says?" The question landed like a bomb, and the audience held its breath. Leavitt didn't blink, her gaze piercing Kimmel. "Laughing? The world laughed at us when we lost millions of jobs to terrible trade deals. I stand with the Americans who've been forgotten, the workers in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Who do you stand with, Jimmy, besides the audience laughing at your script?" The crowd erupted, chants of "Karoline" echoing through the studio, many standing to cheer. This standoff between entertainment and political accountability affects us all. If you believe in holding both sides responsible, subscribe now. Our channel delivers these unfiltered confrontations straight to your feed every week. Kimmel tried to interject, "This is a show, not a campaign rally," but his voice was drowned out by the crowd's noise. Leavitt turned to the audience, her voice powerful like a call to arms. "Folks, I know you came here for fun, but you deserve more than cheap jokes. You deserve to know about the people fighting to bring jobs back, to secure our borders, to build a stronger America. That's the truth I bring here, no matter how he tries to twist it." The applause roared like thunder, overwhelming Kimmel's attempts to regain control of the mood. Kimmel leaned in, his voice now tinged with desperation. "Truth? You call defending someone who constantly makes false claims truth? Don't you get tired of performing every day?" Leavitt tilted her head, her smile now defiant. "Performing? I face dozens of reporters daily, answering the toughest questions with no script, no editing team to save me. Like you. What about you, Jimmy? Are you tired of playing the smart guy every night, or is that just the job?" The audience erupted again, laughter now aimed at Kimmel, forcing him to pause to catch his breath. Not giving Kimmel a chance to recover, Leavitt pressed on, her voice like a final sword strike. "You want to talk about falsehoods? Let's talk about how you edit words, twist the truth to make everything a joke. You don't care about Americans, you care about ratings. I'm here to defend the people you ignore, and I won't let you turn that into a punchline." Kimmel tried to cut in. "You're turning my show into a political forum, Karoline." But Leavitt interrupted, her eyes blazing. "No, Jimmy, I'm turning it into a place where the truth is spoken, and if that scares you, maybe you should change careers." The stage felt like it was ablaze. The audience stood in greater numbers, their cheers like a tidal wave sweeping away Kimmel's every effort. She turned to the audience once more, her voice resounding. "Don't let people like him decide what you think. You're smarter than that, you're stronger than that. And we, the people working for you, won't stop, no matter how many jokes we face." The applause became a storm, many standing, chanting her name, while Kimmel sat there, his smile now a pale shadow. Kimmel tried to salvage the moment. "Wow, Karoline, you sure know how to heat up the stage," but his voice was lost in the crowd's noise. Leavitt looked at him, her gaze that of someone who'd won decisively. "I'm not done yet, Jimmy," she said, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. "But I'll give you a chance to rethink before we go on." The camera zoomed in on her face. No fear, only radiant confidence. Kimmel raised a hand, trying to quiet the audience. "We'll be back after the break," he said, his voice straining to sound upbeat, but the studio still shook with cheers for Leavitt. If you're stunned by how quickly this power dynamic shifted, drop a comment below with your thoughts. The fourth wall between political reality and entertainment breaks down in moments like these, and we're covering every angle. The stage returned after the commercial break, still trembling with thunderous applause for Karoline Leavitt, who had turned the interview into a battlefield where she held the upper hand. Jimmy Kimmel, though still sporting his signature smile, was clearly losing control. His hands gripped the edge of the desk, his eyes wavering as he tried to reclaim the atmosphere. The audience, now like a sea of people swept up in a frenzy, kept standing, chanting "Karoline," while the stage light shone directly on Leavitt, making her red suit glow like an unquenchable flame. She sat there, her gaze icy, unshaken, like a warrior who knew she had won but was still ready for more. Kimmel leaned forward, his tone now a mix of desperation and bitterness. "Karoline, you talk about truth, but the whole country sees you standing behind someone who's thrown the economy into chaos. Gas prices up 30%, inflation hitting 8% in the past year according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You call that building?" The question was like a final arrow aimed straight at Leavitt, hoping to make her falter. The audience held their breath, a few boos mixing with applause, awaiting her response. But Leavitt didn't blink. She smiled, a confident yet razor-sharp grin, and replied instantly. "Jimmy, you love stats when they suit you, don't you? Gas prices are a global issue. Did you know crude oil prices spiked 40% due to Middle East conflicts? But what you won't say is that we've boosted domestic oil production by 15%, creating 300,000 new jobs per the Department of Energy. I call that building. What do you call it when you just sit here whining?" The stage erupted again, applause like a tsunami, with many audience members standing, shouting in support. Kimmel tried to interject. "Building? You're defending someone who's made us a laughingstock worldwide." But Leavitt cut him off, her voice resounding, drowning out his words. "Laughingstock? The world laughed at us when we lost millions of jobs to failed policies of the past. I'm here to defend the Americans you ignore. The miners in West Virginia, the factory workers in Indiana. Have you ever mentioned them in your jokes? Or do you just laugh at things you don't understand?" The audience went wild, cheers shaking the studio. Kimmel, now visibly cornered, tried a final blow. "Karoline, you can say whatever you want, but the country sees you standing behind someone who can't keep promises. Don't you get tired of playing spokesperson for a failure?" The question was like a bomb, and the studio fell silent for a second, all eyes on Leavitt. She stood up slowly, her demeanor calm but radiating authority, her gaze locked on Kimmel like a final declaration of war. "Failure?" she said, her voice booming like thunder. "We've brought millions of jobs back, lowered unemployment to 3.5%, the lowest in 50 years according to the Bureau of Statistics. Failure is you sitting here throwing stones at people fighting for this country just to get a few cheap laughs." The audience exploded, applause like a tidal wave, many standing, chanting her name. Leavitt turned to the crowd, her eyes blazing, her voice powerful like a speech. "You deserve to know about the people working day and night to build this country, not to hear lies wrapped in laughter. I'm here for you, and I won't let anyone, not even you, Jimmy, stop that." The cheers became a storm, drowning out every other sound in the studio. But Leavitt didn't let him continue. She removed her mic calmly, not rushed, not angry, but as an act of asserting power. "I don't need your stage to speak the truth," she said, looking straight at Kimmel, her gaze sharp as steel. "I came here to represent Americans, but you just want a circus. Thanks, Jimmy, but I'm done." She turned to the audience, raising her hand like a queen addressing the crowd. "Don't let people like him decide what you think. Believe in the truth." The studio erupted, applause and cheers resounding, many standing, shouting, "Karoline!" like a victory cry. Kimmel tried to slip in a weak joke. "Wow, looks like she didn't like my stage lights," but the scattered laughter from the audience only highlighted his defeat. Leavitt walked off the stage, her stride steady, head held high, the lights following her like a crown. The camera captured the historic moment, the studio chaotic with arguments and cheers, Some audience members raising their phones recording Leavitt's exit, while Kimmel sat there, his smile now just a pale shadow. That final mic drop moment changed the rules of engagement between politicians and entertainment media forever. If you've ever felt the media distorts political reality, share this video as proof that the truth can still break through. Don't forget to subscribe. We're tracking the fallout from confrontations like these 24/7. As Karoline Leavitt left the stage, the lights still followed her silhouette, her red suit blazing like an unextinguishable fire. The studio continued to shake with applause mixed with chants of "Karoline" and debates erupting in the crowd. Jimmy Kimmel, sitting behind his desk, forced a strange smile, but his eyes betrayed his disarray. "Well, that was an interesting night," he said, trying to inject humor, but the sparse laughter from the audience couldn't mask the chaotic atmosphere. The camera panned across the crowd, capturing stunned faces, phones raised to record the historic moment, and Kimmel gripping his hands as if clinging to what little control remained. "We'll be back after the break," he said, but the studio remained electric, no one paying attention to his closing words. Within minutes of Leavitt's exit, social media exploded like a tidal wave. Twitter was flooded with hashtags, #vitrials and #KimmelSchooled, with thousands of posts every second. One user wrote, "Karoline Leavitt just turned Jimmy Kimmel into a spectator on his own show. Queen!" alongside a clip of Leavitt removing her mic, racking up over 2 million views in just 10 minutes. On TikTok, slow-motion videos of her walking off with her icy gaze spread like wildfire, set to triumphant music like a Hollywood movie. A Gen Z user posted, "She didn't just win, she dominated," with a fire emoji, garnering tens of thousands of likes. Even Instagram, typically filled with fashion posts, was overtaken by tributes to Leavitt, with captions like, "This is how you stand up to biased media." Kimmel's supporters tried to push back, but their voices were quickly drowned out. One account wrote, "Leavitt just talked without answering anything, but was met with hundreds of replies. She answered with truth, while Kimmel only had jokes." Online forums like Reddit buzzed with a thread on r/politics, drawing over 10,000 comments, calling the Showdown the TV battle of the decade. A top comment read, "Leavitt didn't just beat Kimmel, she exposed how entertainment media twists truth for profit." Conservatives on social media hailed her as a beacon of honesty, while many neutral viewers admitted, "I don't support Trump, but Leavitt gave Kimmel a lesson." If media accountability matters to you, this is just the beginning of our coverage. Subscribe now and join the thousands demanding better from both our politicians and our entertainers. Mainstream media jumped in fast. Fox News posted that night, "Karoline Leavitt annihilates Jimmy Kimmel on his own turf," quoting her line about forgotten Americans as a victory slogan. Newsmax ran the headline, "Press Secretary crushes comedian, truth triumphs," citing Leavitt's stats, 3.5% unemployment, the lowest in half a century. Meanwhile, left-leaning outlets like CNN grudgingly acknowledged her strength but downplayed it. Leavitt may have scored points, but she dodged questions about Trump's failures. Even so, the article admitted she turned Kimmel's stage into her own press podium. YouTube exploded with reaction videos from online personalities. A conservative YouTuber with 1 million subscribers posted an analysis. "Leavitt didn't just win, she changed how we see late-night TV. Kimmel wanted drama, but she brought truth." The video hit 500,000 views in hours. Even neutral influencers, usually apolitical, spoke up. "I didn't know who she was before, but Leavitt just made me want to learn more about White House policy." Gen Z, often seen as apathetic, flocked to follow Leavitt on social media, boosting her accounts by 200,000 followers overnight. In the studio, the audience kept arguing as the show cut to commercials. Some held up phones sharing live clips on Instagram stories with captions like, "I just witnessed history." Others, even those not supporting Leavitt, admitted to friends, "She's tough. Kimmel didn't stand a chance." An older audience member whispered to a neighbor, "It's been a while since I saw someone speak so boldly on TV." The chaos was so intense that studio staff had to step in, asking people to sit, but cheers still erupted whenever Leavitt's name was mentioned. Backstage, Kimmel's team was in a panic. A producer shouted through a headset, "We just let her steal the show." Another whispered, "Ratings will be high but the cost, it's too steep." Kimmel, still in his host chair, stared at the monitor, his face devoid of a smile. He knew he'd been defeated, not by a seasoned politician, but by a young woman armed with truth and courage. Meanwhile, Leavitt, having left the studio, stepped outside with the demeanor of a victor. She didn't look back, but her eyes said it all. She had turned an entertainment stage into a battlefield and walked away with an invisible crown. Within hours, Karoline Leavitt became a national phenomenon, not just for the showdown, but for how she turned a TV moment into a call for truth and faith. She didn't just defeat Kimmel, she made everyone listen. Take a moment right now to like and share if you believe more public figures should stand their ground like this when faced with media manipulation. Our channel is dedicated to exposing these pivotal confrontations that mainstream coverage often minimizes. The night after the historic showdown on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the stage lights still blazed, but the studio atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Jimmy Kimmel stepped out with his familiar smile, but his eyes betrayed tension, as if he were entering a battle he'd already lost. The audience clapped, but the cheers lacked fervor, mixed with whispers of Karoline. And last night, Kimmel sat down, looked straight into the camera, and tried to regain his footing with a joke. "Hey everyone, tonight we'll keep it lighter, because I'm not sure I can handle another fight." Laughter rang out, but it was weak. Not enough to dispel the shadow of Karoline Leavitt, who had turned this stage into her battlefield just 24 hours earlier. Kimmel knew he couldn't dodge it. Social media was still ablaze with #vitriol, the clip of her removing her mic now surpassing 10 million views on YouTube, and analyses called him the victim of a young press secretary. He took a breath, his voice dropping, rarely serious. "Last night I had let's call it a lively conversation with Karoline Leavitt. I went too far, and I want to say I respect her strength. She's a formidable opponent." The audience clapped sparsely, but the mood was heavy. Kimmel's apology, though carefully scripted, felt reluctant to many, a belated attempt to salvage his image. On Twitter, a user wrote, "Kimmel apologizing too late. Leavitt won by knockout." The post quickly racked up 50,000 likes, reflecting the crowd's sentiment. Kimmel had fallen. Meanwhile, at the White House, Karoline Leavitt stepped up to the press briefing podium. With more confidence than ever, her navy suit exuded calm, but her eyes still burned like the fire from the night before. The reporters, usually sharp and aggressive, seemed more cautious today, as if they too sensed her power after her clash with Kimmel. One opened. "Miss Leavitt, about your showdown with Jimmy Kimmel. Do you regret walking off the stage?" Leavitt smiled, her gaze piercing. "Regret? I went there to speak the truth, and I did. I walked off because I don't need stage lights to prove it." The briefing room echoed with rare applause from a few reporters. An unusual occurrence in that typically cold space. Leavitt's response spread like wildfire. Fox News ran the headline, "Leavitt fires back at Kimmel from White House. Truth doesn't need a stage," quoting her as a symbol of honesty. A Newsmax article praised, "In 24 hours, Leavitt turned a comedian into a lesson for all of Hollywood." Even neutral outlets like USA Today had to admit, Leavitt didn't just beat Kimmel. She redefined how a politician confronts entertainment media. Karoline Leavitt's confrontation with Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just a viral moment. It became a turning point in American media culture. It challenged the assumed hierarchy between entertainment hosts and political figures, demonstrating that prepared facts could triumph over rehearsed comedy when delivered with unwavering conviction. Young Americans, particularly women, found in Leavitt a new kind of role model, one who used precise information rather than emotional appeals to win her battles. Political communication programs at universities across America began using the Leavitt-Kimmel exchange as a case study in effective messaging and media confrontation. For the White House, Leavitt's performance translated into a measurable shift in public opinion polling. While policy positions remained divisive, the administration saw a 12-point increase in ratings on strength and standing up for American workers, the exact themes Leavitt had hammered home during her appearance. In the weeks that followed, other political figures attempted to replicate Leavitt's approach on different entertainment shows, but few managed the perfect balance of preparedness, poise, and strategic assertiveness that had made her exit so powerful. Late-night hosts, meanwhile, became noticeably more careful when interviewing political guests, often researching economic statistics more thoroughly before attempting confrontational jokes. If you believe this kind of confrontation represents a necessary correction in media power dynamics, subscribe now to Karoline Now. We're tracking similar showdowns across America's cultural and political landscape every single week. Perhaps most telling was the shift in Kimmel's own approach. His ratings had taken a measurable hit after the confrontation. dropping nearly 18% among viewers aged 25 to 54, the demographic most coveted by advertisers. While his core audience remained loyal, the viral spread of Leavitt's takedown had created a perception problem that his comedy alone couldn't solve. Karoline Leavitt, meanwhile, saw her political star continue to rise. What might have been a brief role as White House press secretary was now being discussed as a potential launching pad for higher office. Political consultants noted her rare ability to appear both intellectually formidable and authentically connected to working Americans, a combination that transcended party lines. On social media, the Leavitt effect continued to ripple outward. Clips of her Kimmel confrontation were remixed, analyzed, and transformed into everything from serious political commentary to memes and inspirational videos. One particularly popular TikTok trend had young women recreating Leavitt's mic removal moment during arguments about everything from college debates to workplace confrontations. "Stand your ground, know your facts, walk away when you've made your point," became an unofficial mantra, attributed to Leavitt, though she'd never actually said those words together. What made Leavitt's performance so remarkable wasn't just her command of facts, but her understanding of the visual power of television. By physically removing her microphone, a gesture typically reserved for defeated guests or scandal-plagued interviewees, she had inverted the power dynamic, transforming what should have been Kimmel's home court advantage into her own victory march. It was this sophisticated understanding of media symbolism, combined with her preparation and poise, that elevated the moment from mere political theater to cultural inflection point. In an age when most political confrontations devolved into shouting matches or prepackaged talking points, Leavitt had demonstrated that prepared substance could still triumph over entertainment packaging. For journalists and media analysts, the incident forced a reckoning about the increasingly blurred lines between news, entertainment, and political advocacy. Had Kimmel crossed an ethical line by editing Leavitt's press conference footage to create a misleading impression? Or was Leavitt equally calculating in her preparation and execution of what appeared to be a spontaneous moment of righteous indignation? The truth, as always, contained elements of both interpretations, but the enduring image of Leavitt walking off that stage remained a Rorschach test for how Americans viewed the relationship between politics and entertainment media. Have you noticed how political interviews have changed since confrontations like this one? Drop your observations in the comments. We're building a community that analyzes these power shifts in real time. And don't forget to subscribe for our weekly breakdowns. 6 months after the confrontation, a journalism professor at Columbia would write, "The Leavitt-Kimmel exchange will be studied for years as the moment when a political figure fully understood that in the battle between facts and comedy, facts can win, but only when delivered with the same emotional intelligence and theatrical awareness that comedians have long mastered." This insight captured what made the confrontation so compelling. Leavitt hadn't just brought facts to a comedy fight, she had brought her own competing performance, one rooted in a different kind of authenticity that resonated with millions of viewers tired of seeing serious policy discussions reduced to punchlines. For the entertainment industry, the incident served as a wake-up call. Several late-night shows quietly adjusted their approach to political content, ensuring research teams verified economic claims more thoroughly before hosts delivered their monologues. Comedy Central even launched a new segment called Fact Check that attempted to blend humor with more rigorous policy analysis, a direct response to the vulnerabilities Leavitt had exposed in traditional political comedy. Karoline Leavitt herself remained measured about her newfound fame. In her only extended interview about the incident, she told a conservative podcast host, "I didn't go on that show to create a viral moment. I went to defend policies that are helping real Americans. The rest just happened, because the truth has its own power when you stand firmly behind it." This explanation, whether calculated or genuine, further enhanced her reputation as a political communicator who understood that in the social media age, authenticity, or at least the convincing performance of authenticity, was the most valuable currency. Media training firms incorporated the Leavitt method into their executive coaching programs, teaching corporate leaders how to maintain composure under hostile questioning and when to recognize the strategic value of walking away from an unproductive exchange. One firm even marketed a program called the Leavitt Exit for CEOs facing crisis situations. The White House, recognizing Leavitt's value as a communicator who could break through media filters, elevated her role beyond traditional press briefings. She became a regular presence in key industrial states, speaking directly to workers and business owners, while carefully maintaining the same no-nonsense demeanor that had served her so well against Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel, to his credit, eventually found a way to incorporate the incident into his own evolving persona. 6 months after the confrontation, he invited a panel of communication experts to analyze exactly how Leavitt had outmaneuvered him. A self-deprecating segment that helped restore some of his credibility, while acknowledging the new reality that political figures were increasingly prepared to challenge entertainment formats on their own terms. "She got me," Kimmel admitted during the segment, "and maybe that's good for all of us. Comedy should punch up, not down, and if we're being honest, sometimes we in late night have gotten too comfortable being the ones who decide what's funny about serious issues." This moment of reflection, while carefully scripted, represented its own kind of victory, an acknowledgement that the dynamics of political entertainment had fundamentally shifted. This historic confrontation revealed the power of preparation, authenticity, and strategic messaging in our media landscape. If you want to see more analysis of pivotal political confrontations that mainstream coverage misses, subscribe now to Karoline Now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our breaking coverage. For Americans watching from home, the Leavitt-Kimmel confrontation became a perfect encapsulation of the country's larger media divides. Conservative viewers saw it as vindication, proof that their perspectives could triumph when given a fair hearing. Progressive viewers largely saw it as a masterclass in deflection and performance, admiring Leavitt's technique even while questioning her substance. But perhaps most interestingly, independent and politically disengaged viewers found themselves drawn to the raw authenticity of the exchange. In focus groups conducted by a major media research firm, participants who self-identified as not interested in politics repeatedly mentioned the Leavitt confrontation as a rare moment of genuine human interaction in an otherwise scripted political landscape. "She seemed real," one participant noted, "not like she was reading talking points or trying to be liked. She was there to do a job and didn't care if the audience was with her or not." This perception, that Leavitt had somehow broken through the fourth wall of political performance, was particularly powerful among younger viewers who had grown up with highly produced reality television and could recognize authentic emotion even when it appeared in a political context. For the broader political ecosystem, the confrontation became a reference point for discussing the changing relationship between political figures and the media gatekeepers who had traditionally shaped public perception. Leavitt had demonstrated that in the digital age, a political communicator could effectively bypass traditional channels by creating a moment compelling enough to spread organically across platforms. The incident also revealed something important about American audiences. They remained hungry for substantive exchanges about economic issues that directly affected their lives. While Kimmel had attempted to frame the discussion around personality and conflict, Leavitt had consistently returned to specific policies and their impacts on workers. The audience response suggested that beneath the entertainment veneer, Americans wanted their economic concerns taken seriously. This insight wasn't lost on media executives. Several networks began developing new formats that attempted to blend entertainment values with more substantive policy discussions, recognizing that audiences might be ready for more sophisticated political content than they had previously been offered. As the months passed, the Leavitt moment, as it came to be known in political communication circles, became shorthand for a particular approach to media engagement: prepared but not scripted, assertive but not aggressive, and willing to exit on your own terms rather than continue an unproductive exchange. Young staffers in Washington aspired to have their own Leavitt moment, though few would find themselves in a context that so perfectly showcased the approach. What made Leavitt's performance so compelling wasn't just her technique, but the genuine conviction she brought to her defense of economic policies she clearly believed in. That authenticity, the sense that Leavitt wasn't just performing a role, but actually fighting for something she valued, was ultimately what distinguished her exit from similar attempts by others to engineer viral moments. Americans had become sophisticated consumers of political media, able to distinguish between calculated performance and genuine conviction, even when both were carefully packaged. In this way, the Leavitt-Kimmel confrontation became more than just another viral political moment. It became a case study in how substance and style could combine to create a new kind of political communication, one that respected audience intelligence while still embracing the visual power of modern media. The lessons would continue to reshape both political and entertainment landscapes long after the specific policy disputes at the center of the confrontation had faded from public memory. The enduring image of Karoline Leavitt walking off that stage, confident, unbowed, and thoroughly in command, had permanently altered expectations for how political figures could and should engage with an entertainment media that had perhaps grown too comfortable in its role as cultural arbiter. And in living rooms across America, viewers who had witnessed that moment would never quite watch political interviews the same way again. Has this breakdown of the Leavitt-Kimmel confrontation changed how you view political interviews on late-night television? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe in our mission to bring you the unfiltered truth about America's cultural and political battles, please subscribe to Karoline Now. The fight for America's soul continues. Join us on the front lines.